Cool. So we're going to touch on some tonality stuff. I guess the first question is, what is tonality? Which is quite a large question. Um, it's it starts to come into the color of sound, if you don't mind me saying, in a purely sort of conceptual way.
Yep.
Tonality is something that has grown over the past several hundred years in terms of what sound is and the I guess the nuance of the sound that we are used to hearing these days in terms of just Western pop music and jazz music, and especially through the jazz period, tonality was massively played with in order to make it a bit more complex and more interesting for the ear. Basically, though, when we are referring to tonality, most of the time we're referring to, in a completely rudimentary sense, I'll generally be referring to the major or minor world that
Mm-hmm.
a chord might sit in, an interval might sit in, a piece might sit in. So that's the main. They're the main distinctions, major and minor. Trying to get our heads around what is major and what is minor. The first thing that's going to let you know what our major is, and I'm sure you already know this, but not to assume anything. Here we've got our C major chord, and with the major chord, the one defining feature about the sound that we hear is the major third interval between the distance between the first note of the chord and the third note of the chord. The first note and the second note, that is the third scale degree in C major.
Mm-hmm.
It may have sounded a bit complicated, but like that. Third scale degree in C major, but it's the second note in the chord. Okay? So here we have our major third interval. And for the past, 400, 500, 600 years, that interval was slowly coming into, I guess, the music vernacular of modern contemporary music. So, here we have four semitones in between. Also, is my mic loud enough? Do you reckon is that okay? Everyone have
I
it?
think it's fine.
Something I'm constantly playing with every day. So we've got our major third, four semitones. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we never count the first semitone. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we've got our minor third. 1, 2, 3. So there lies the kind of the defining feature of major and minor. Major third, minor third. How's everyone feel about that so far?
Yep. Good.
Yeah, happy days. So, when we talk about tonal center, generally speaking, most contemporary Western music is going to be written in a specific key. And the most key that we keep playing around with is our C major. And a key for me is sort of the building blocks of most pop music. Okay? If we build the song around the C major chord, that's just 5, 1. The piece that I've created is going to have the general tonal center of a major sound. Okay? Because the first chord that I'm playing is C major, the last chord I'm playing is the C major. How this looks like in a key signature, as most of you probably already know, the C major key signature is no sharps, no flats. If we were to look at that in a piece of music, and we'll do so in a moment, generally speaking, the first chord or the first note might be one of the notes that are within the C major chord. This is purely theoretical. Of course, people can break those rules and start on the fourth chord instead. But if you start on the fourth chord, I'd still say it has a major tonality, mainly because the 1, the 4, and the 5 chords of a particular key are considered the primary chords of that key, and they allow us to perceive the major tonality of that key. Okay? Every major key has a relative minor, and that relative minor incorporates all the building blocks and ingredients of that major key, but shifts it down a minor third. So I've got my C, and then the relative minor is going to be a minor third down from C, and that's 3 semitones, as we mentioned before. idea with the relative minor is that it relates to the major chord, or sorry, the major key that we've just been playing. And it also uses the same key signature. It also uses the same notes. Happy days?
Yep.
Cool. Great. So, got our A minor. And as we can see, the defining characteristic of the A minor is the minor third between the first note and the second note on the third scale degree. Okay? So that's creating our minor tonality. Now, if the piece begun with an A minor chord and still had the key signature of C major, they share the same key signature, but I would say that the tonality is existing more in a minor world than a major world, based on the fact that the first chord is an A minor. Any questions on that so far, guys?
This might be skipping ahead a little bit, but with
That's right.
what are they called? Modes.
Yep.
That's not that they're based off the scale degrees, aren't they? Because I was just thinking with the minor, how you go back 3 semitones.
Yeah.
Would that also be technically a mode?
Correct.
That yeah. Okay.
So the minor key is referred to as an Aeolian mode,
Oh, that's right.
based on the 6th scale degree. And just to give a sort of rudimentary explanation, the modes work in the same sense. I mean, when you think about it, we've got a C major scale, and now I'm playing the C major scale, but I'm starting on the A. Yeah? So that's most contemporary music, major and minor. But predating Western contemporary music, we had a lot of different subcultures were playing with the idea of modes. And modes is really just playing a different scale. You shift the focus of the scale. You start on a different note. So you don't need to fully understand this or grasp this, but every note within the C major scale, playing that low note to the octave up is going to be playing a different mode.
Okay.
And every time that you change the root note, you're going to get a different color. So right now, we're effectively only looking at 2 modes. The Ionian mode, which is the major scale, and the Aeolian mode, which is the minor scale. And they're based on Greek words, for whatever reason. I'm still working that out. Got like 5 encyclopedias of music just in my bookshelf. I keep buying from Savers.
You're really interesting.
Yeah, I need to read this. Let's see if we can find this. Is this clarifying things for you a little bit, Brendan?
Yeah. No, it is. Good.
So here, this is jazz standard. Here, we've got a bit of information. Does anyone feel comfortable working out what key signature we are in to begin with, before looking at anything else?
Are we in F flat major? No.
Just F.
Just F, yeah.
Yeah, just F. So, you know, and we'll touch on the circle of fifths a little bit more, but basically, whenever I move 5 notes away from C, I add a sharp. Okay? So if I move 5 notes up from C to G, I add a sharp. And if I move from G to D, I add another sharp. And D to A, I add another sharp. So that's creating the different key signatures. And that's a very, very sort of more of a linear way of describing the circle of fifths. But the basic sentiment there is that every time I move up a fifth, I'm going to add a sharp. Now, the same is true if every time I move down a fifth, I add a flat. Eventually, these notes are going to have like a little overlay area where they kind of interchange, and you could refer to them as flats or sharps. Eventually. But the C major has no sharps or flats, and 5 notes down from that is F. So when I move 5 notes down into my new key, I'm going to add 1 flat. And in order to know exactly what those flats are, there is a bit of practice involved in terms of working out what a major scale is: whole tone, semitone, tone, semitone. And so then I'd work out, all of a sudden, you know, once I do tone, semitone, I find out where that B flat, or where the flat needs to exist. In this time, in this way, it's a B flat. The key signature is always going to be in the same order. Okay, so B flat will always be the first flat that you see in any key signature. That is a flat key signature. The next flat that's required is an E flat. The next one is an A flat. The next one's a D flat. And it keeps moving in fifths, but we won't touch on that too much right now. But right now we're working in F major, as far as I know, without looking at the content. This is a little tricky because there's no piano accompaniment, but this is what you'd refer to as a lead sheet or a jazz chart or something from a fake book. It's just melody and chord. And a musician would just read through this, play the chords, and play for a singer or whatever. I don't know. So already we just get a bit of information. We see medium swing or ballad. That's pretty broad in how you want to interpret this song. And then we've got section A. Generally, most jazz songs will be an A and a B, sometimes a C. Those sections will all be different in some way. And then we've got our C, which is just written in a slightly fancier kind of jazz handwritten way. C referring to common time, also known as 4/4. And yeah, if there was a strike through the C, then we'd be in cut common. But we are not. So, it's a slightly tricky one, but I'm getting told the answer already. The fact of the matter is, it's F major, but the relative minor to F major is D minor, because it's 3 semitones down. So, when I'm looking at relative minor, all I'm doing is using the same notes as F major, but the lowest note, generally speaking, to begin with, is going to be a D. Okay? Because it's all about the relationship between the lowest note. If the lowest note was an F, and I played a D minor in my right hand, we still get this tonality of major. Mainly because the relationship between the A and the F is a major third. In this voicing that I'm playing, it's a compound major third, so it's a bit further away. But if I brought it together, it's a major third. So that's the relationship. The relationship is always about tension being pulled between the lowest note and the top note. In this way, again, it's already telling me the answer because the first chord is D minor. And the melody is based on the 5th scale degree of D minor. Okay, so even then it's not telling me too much, but then I see that the next note is an F. The F in a D minor chord is the flattened third. Because a D major is 1, 3, 5. And then the F is a flattened third. Relative to D major, this is where it can get a little bit confusing. But the main take home here is that F relative to D is a minor third. It's 3 semitones, and that creates our minor tonality. So already I've got, and if I keep playing, I'll start to find more remnants of minor, which already I've got quite dark, somber tune. Major now. So minor tension chord. And then back to minor. Major. We're getting a bit into complex territory right now. Just FYI. Very kind of classical progression, but with a bit more of a jazz play. There's a classic minor progression, minor 2-5-1. But that pull between the A major chord and minor. Because every note has a 5-note push and pull. The 5 notes away from any note is going to be strongly related to the note 5 notes below. So as soon as I play that A, we get the result. Find something less jazzy.
Who's that written by?
Who's it written by? Jerome Kern and this guy, Otto Harbach.
Yeah.
Don't take my pronunciation there, but
It's better than what mine
it's
would
okay.
be.
So I've actually never played it, but it's on my iPad, so probably should learn it. Let's go by title. Everything's jazz. Everything's jazz. We won't do Alanis Morissette because so, little take home, when we're working out our flat key signatures, for those that don't already know, we use the second last flat to work out what key we're in. So, whoa. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 flats, just to know. And I take the second last flat in that list. What key does that put me in?
A flat.
A flat major. Yeah. And then I probably just want to get a bit more clarification because it could be the key of A flat major, but maybe it actually starts on F. That's A flat. 1, 2, 3. That's my minor relative. Okay, so maybe the first chord's minor, but I look ahead and I see that the first chord is A flat. The melody starts on the major third. That's the major third in A flat major. So already I'm getting wads of A flat major. Yeah. And also the lowest note, the bass note, is an A flat. So already I'm generating a relationship between this A flat and the major third of the C. And it's really, that's about analyzing it. And there's the other aspect of actually orally analyzing it as soon as the song plays. Sometimes that can be due to how it makes you feel. And also with a bit of practice, we can learn how to actually start to identify major and minor. But then some songs are very ambiguous and they choose to be ambiguous. But here we've got... So we've got some sense of like uplifting, strong. For those playing at home, the next chord is an A flat over G flat. So I'll just sort of pick that apart for now. The A flat chord itself, the major chord being 4 semitones, then 3 semitones. That's how we build the major chord. So to get first note, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1, 2, 3. Everyone happy with building major chords? When we see the slash, it just means change the bass note. That's all it means. Yeah, so I'm going to go A flat, and then I'm going to go A flat over G flat. Just changing the bass note. Okay, that's what we refer to as a flattened 7. Because in the key of A flat, G is major 7, but the bass note here is calling for a flattened 7, which you get a lot in like rock, soul, music, and that's pulling from Olivia when we're talking about modes. It's pulling from the Mixolydian mode, which is the fifth scale degree of D flat. Anyway, I won't touch on that too much. Don't want your brains exploding. A flat over G flat, minor, F minor. The minor's there, but the minor's just functioning as a passing chord. It's not saying this is minor. The whole song's minor. I'm plastering minor everywhere. It's just saying, let's go here for 2 seconds. When we look deeper into the F minor chord, which is F, 3 semitones, then 4 semitones, that's F minor chord, we can compare the difference between an F minor and an A flat. And you might see some similarities. Yeah? So what do we notice? What notes are the same? Sorry, say that one more time.
The G sharp, A flat.
Yep. And the C. Good.
And the C.
Yeah, great. So commonly when 2 chords share similar tones, they can generally be interchanged. You can sort of take one from there and take one from there. In this regard, the way that the minor chord is acting, it's kind of its role, is really just to still allude to the major, but I'm going to change the bass note to an F. Okay, that's a little sort of a bit more complex kind of way of thinking about it. But we get our A flat over G flat, F minor, D flat, which is 4th scale degree in A flat. So that's a primary chord. So generally a primary chord in pop music is going to go back to the 1 chord, if it's not a 1 chord already. So 4, and then 1 over flat 7, minor 6, and then 4 again. And we notice that the D flat has an add 2 in it, and when we're looking at add 2s and add 4s, we need to think about the key that it's coming from, not the key that we're in. So when I see D flat add 2, I need to think about the key of D flat, not the key of A flat. Okay, it's completely irrelevant at this point. So in the key of D flat, the 2 in anything is going to be a tone away from the root note. It's going to be 1 tone. That's the 2. So when it says add 2, you play your D flat, and you add 2. Your number 2. Pretty simple. Of course, it's a common tone in A flat and D flat, so just so happens that it works. No issues. Any questions, friends?
Nope.
Cool. Yep. All right. I'm thinking of going on a little bit more about chords, but how do you guys feel about that? Do you want to do something?
Yeah.
How do you feel about this accompaniment? I mean, I know there's quite a lot of notes going on, but does it look a bit daunting?
At first glance, a little bit, but
That question. How does it look? We'll touch on chords a little bit, and I just want to see if we can look at this and kind of just see the simplicity in it. In first glance, absolutely. It's tricky because there is. And I'll explain to you a little concept here. Generally in piano music, in the piano accompaniment, there are several different voices in the accompaniment. It's just a different way of saying that maybe, like most commonly, because you guys be looking at musical theatre stuff, the piano conductor is a reduction from the orchestral score. And so they've taken a bit from the strings, they've taken a bit from the piano themselves, they've taken a bit from guitar, da-da-da-da. They squish it all together, and some notes will be long, some notes will be short. In here, I can see that there are 2 voices. Now, voices can be polyphonic, okay? They don't have to be a single line, okay? With respect to the voice will commonly be monophonic, unless there are many voices. But in relation to writing voices on a piano chart, they can have as many notes as you want, provided the pianist can play it. I can clearly see that there are 4 crotchets. Can you guys see the 4 crotchets that I've highlighted in yellow? And so they just play here, here, here. So I could just play those. Whilst that's happening, there's also this quaver accompaniment. I could just play that. Sounds a bit strange. When we play it together, the idea is that I still hold the yellow notes, the ones I've highlighted, I hold them over the 2 quavers. With electric piano, it's very easy to hear. So, and I'll find a nice 80s one. There we go. Here we go. That makes sense? Actually, that's better. And it's a workout for the 3 and 4 finger, because the 3 and 4 is going to be holding those notes for a little bit longer, yeah, to get a bit of extension in those notes. And in the left hand, we see 1, 2, and 3. 4 and, yeah, 1, 2, and 3, and 2 and 3, 4 and. How does everyone feel about that? Breaking down quavers and stuff. Rhythms can always be a bit of a sticky point when reading, but yeah, already I can sort of go, you know what, I'm gonna skim over these 16th notes because I just can't be bothered. I'm just not feeling it today. And I'm going to see the inherent simplicity of the quavers. Dee-doo, 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 dee-doo. In fact, if I know my chords a little bit better, and in this way, all I want to do is play the first chord of every bar. Okay, in this style, I know there's a few more symbols here, but that's just a bit of extra color, when we're sight reading something or reading something for the first time, we need to find ways of just playing the milestones or like the most important parts and then filling in the gaps as we get better. So now I can see that there's sort of an undulating quaver progression. I can kind of see that it goes dee-doo, dee-doo. It moves up and down. So when I'm actually playing the chord, rather than getting hung up about what I'm reading, I actually might alter the notes. And that's just a really simple way of improving your accompaniment to make it sound a bit more interesting, rather than... And then I can just add the bass note. D flat. One thing, and we'll touch on, again, in more of the advanced lessons, what the numbers mean, but if you just play what the chords are without the numbers, you'll still get the same picture across. It won't sound exactly the same, but it'll still get the same essence, all right? Mainly because what we're doing there is getting the major or the minor accurate. If we get the major or minor accurate, then we'll be in a pretty good place. Right now, there are no minor chords. None. It's just major. A flat, you are so D flat. G flat. Back to A flat. Yeah. And then I think it just repeats again. That way you can like really simplify a piece. A flat, you are so D flat. And G flat to A flat. Can't you E flat minor? E flat, 3 semitones, 4 semitones. there's my E flat, B flat. Sorry, E flat, G flat, B flat. C, so that's my E flat minor. Back to A flat. Back to D flat. And then our C7, which I could just play plain on C. Cue. Any questions, friends? Start to wrap up in a couple of minutes. We feeling clarified, or more clarified, or less clarified, or?
So you
I like
don't,
to keep things. Yeah.
so you don't necessarily have to play exactly like the notes that are written on the page, as long as you've got the basic chord structure.
Yeah.
Then you're pretty all right.
Yeah. With most pop music, yeah, if you can read along with the chords, then you'll be good. Old high school teachers said to me like, "Oh, you don't have to play all the numbers," and I was really stubborn. I was like, "I want to play all the numbers," but she was very right. She's like, "You don't have to. You can just not if you don't want to." Now, if I was to break this apart a little bit more, first chord A flat add 2. Okay, that's the B flat. Then plain A flat. So it goes beat 1, plain A flat on beat 2. Major 7 is going to be the G. A flat 7 is going to include the flat 7. So D flat with the major 7, which is C natural. This is more of like a preview into next lesson. And then G flat 9, which is a G flat with a flat 7 with a 9. It's very nice. A flat major 7. So that major 7 is a very common, I don't say trope, but like very common. They call them line cliches in music. You often hear them in like a. I'm sure we heard a lot of that last year. But also, it's very common in a lot of pop music. I think Yesterday does it. Beatles. Somewhere in the way she moves, da 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 da, and lots of vaudevillian, or your kind of 20s. What is it? putting on the Ritz or something. Those kind of, you know them. I reckon all of them, especially Brendan. All those Ritzy tunes, and Blue Skies. Blue skies, smiling at me. Now that blue sky, do I see? That's the chord progression. Cool, guys. All right. Shall we wrap up, and I'll let you enjoy this grey and dreary day? Sound like a plan?
Sounds good. Thank
Enjoy
you.
joining me. Hopefully see you. So tomorrow we got a level 2. It's up to you if you want to come. And then we're back to another beginners at 12 on Friday with a level 2 attached to that. So you're always welcome to come to whatever you want to. Okay?
Thank you.
All right. Good to see you guys.